Hey gang, it's been a while. I'm sorry I haven't been doing this that often. Been busy, but I wanted to basically answer kind of do a girl's question that she had about the schools that I went to as I grew up. Well, as any American child, I went to Americanized schools until even in the 3 years we were in Germany, the school was more. It was an on-base. Well, it was part of the military's location, basically, part of the Air Force's location. But it wasn't like a military school where I wore uniform or anything like that. It was like a regular, everyday American school, just kind of a little bit more geared towards the children of the Air Force families that were there. It was a grade school, and then a the grade school went from first grade or kindergarten to I think it was eighth grade. I don't know. I wasn't there for middle school, but I went up to eighth grade, and the high school facility was ninth to 12th. Um, but it was just like any ordinary school that you'd find here in the states. Granted, you had more. If you were living on base, you didn't have as much activity with the locals. Luckily, I only lived on base for 1 year in what they call base housing, which is like um, giant apartment complexes, I guess you'd say. Um, but the 2 years that we lived off base, I had to go walk to the town square, which wasn't that far, and or walk to a certain location. It wasn't always the town square to pick up a bus to take us into the base to basically um, go to school. But I did get to because I lived off base, which a lot of families will try to do if they can. Not everybody wants to though. Living off base, I got to have a whole lot of different activities with the local kids. So I learned um, some basic German off the streets, I guess you'd say, which made for interesting German classes when I got in high school because what they teach in school is what the Germans would call High German or Business German, not the everyday common German that you would use if you were not a tourist. Um, but for the most part, my time in Germany um, was very interesting. We had the school would participate in what they call Volksmarches, which is basically like a 5K, 10K, 15K, 20K walk, so to speak. And the school would hand out these, I wish I still had them, these cute medals to basically say, hey, you went and did the march or the walk. Um, which is kind of funny because one of the German holidays that I participated in, which is called, let's see if I pronounce this properly again, Fasching. Not fashing, Fasching, which is a German holiday where the townspeople would get together. They would get these lanterns and they would walk around the town. And as they walked around the town, more and more people would join the walk. And at the end of the walk, they would end in a location near right outside of town, a little park basically, and had this big old pig roast and big old banquet. I wouldn't say a banquet dinner, but a big old barbecue of sorts. Um, and then there was another holiday we were there for, which I think is also part of Flushing, which basically after everybody goes home and turns in for the night, a group of the town's men, basically, would pull pranks. And the pranks were basically if you had anything outside of your home that was not tied down and they can move, um, they would move it to the town square under a maypole. And in the morning, you'd have to come and basically claim your items. The funny thing about the one time that we were there, when we lived in town instead of just up the hill outside, just on the outskirts of town, the first year we were there, my father had gotten my mom a Volkswagen Bug for her own personal use because at the time it was happening, well, at the time we got the Bug, little blue Volkswagen Bug. Um, my dad was coming back to the states TDY, which is basically something happened stateside that he had to come back to, like um, my grandfather's passing away, my cousin Debbie's wedding. So he came back to the states for that. Mom and I stayed in. Sorry, my hair keeps on sticking out. Mom and I stayed in Germany. We were. I don't remember if we were on base by the time he went to come back here for those two things, or if we were still living outside of town. I think we were living on base. But anyhow, the people during this particular holiday decided, since the Bug was not in a garage, it wasn't locked up, they were going to try to move it. Well, they couldn't get into the vehicle to use the steering wheel, so they only got it to the point where it was blocking the street in front of the house we were living in. We were living actually in the upstairs apartment of a German family's home, which is kind of common practice for some of the people who live on the outskirts or near American military bases. They would offer a upstairs proportion of their home, which was the home was made for an upstairs apartment, so somebody could live up there. Well, we were living in the upstairs apartment of this German family, which were very nice people. The father of the father of the gentleman whose family we were living above, was also the mayor of the town and the liaison for the local communities between the American base at the time and the German people. So my father was very lucky, but he lucked out on that. But anyhow, the people couldn't move the Bug. It was stuck, basically blocking the road. Well, this particular road was one of two major roads to get out of town. So we were woken up to horns honking and people just laughing. And they weren't upset. They weren't getting mad. They were just honking like, "Hey, your car's down here," and just like driving into the grass around the car, which was hilariously funny for me because just to see this happening was just like, this is awesome. You can never get that here in the States because if something like that were happening in the States, you get mad people, the police, a tow truck. No, these people just like, come down here and move it. We know why it got moved. So Dad had to basically go downstairs, start it up, pull it into our parking spot there at the house. It was, you know, it was great. And the one thing I do remember and loved about being in Germany was when we moved into the apartment above the family. See if I can pronounce the last name properly. Hybe, I do believe. Hybe, I think was the last name of the family, if I remember right. This was like over 40 years ago. So I'm doing good to remember this stuff. Um, Within a week of moving into the apartment above the Hybes, just about everybody in the village knew us. Now, when I say village, I'm saying that this town, this community, was probably maybe 200 plus people. Definitely nowhere above 300. And I'm just talking about. I don't even think it was that many because I could walk the whole village in a good 2 3 hours. So it probably wasn't even above 200 people. 150 maybe. I don't know. A lot of the small German communities are not that big. In fact, I think the biggest city that was closest to us, when I mean by closest, I mean within like a 45 to 1 hour, 45 to 60 minute drive, would be Koblenz, and that was a major city. While everything else around us was small town communities. Frankfurt, which was the city we flew into from the States, was, I wouldn't say as big as New York, but maybe as big as St. Louis or Chicago. Um, I don't even know what the sizes are of a lot of their major cities that you'd find on maps. The cities that I remember going to would be like Koblenz, Frankfurt, Stuttgart. Um, I don't even think we made it into Munich. Don't think we made it that far south. But yeah, um, the schools there were, well, the American schools, which were on the military bases, were like the schools here in the states. Uh, yeah. Um, Otherwise, most of the schools I've ever been to were just public schools. Until I went into college, I went to well, I was at a vocational college here in Rolla, RTI. Um, then there was the year I was at um, Ozark Christian College here in Joplin. I shouldn't say here. I'm not in Joplin. I'm in Rolla. But yeah, here in Missouri. Otherwise, most of my schooling was just like any other person's schooling. Nothing hard. Nothing dress codey. No uniforms, basically. Otherwise, I had a good time. Um, yeah, and that's the answers for Can Do a Girl. Um, if you have any questions about how how things were when I was growing up as a military child, or any other questions, comments, or suggestions of what you want to hear about, just leave them down below. I will get to them eventually. Again, I'm sorry for taking so long to answer this question. But yeah, I'm trying to answer your questions, and the first one that came was Can Do the Girl. Has that, I had that question about my education or what schools I went to growing up as a child in the military. One of the reasons why I like camo. Um, born and bred military, kind of hard to get it out of my system. Luckily, one of the things that I don't have, I can deal with more and more lately. Well, since I got married, as a child of the military, I'm prone to every 3 years wanting new location, new scenery. But other than that, everything's norm. Like I said, go ahead and add your comments, questions, or suggestions below, and I'll try to get to them. Until next time, see you then. Have a good day.